Yes, today I'll tell about a new book named Roald, James, and the Giant's Peach. So last video we read a new book. This video we read a very new book, and this will tell you about bigger and bigger grew the peach, bigger and bigger and bigger and more bigger. So this video we read from page 1 to page 30. So now let's start to read it with me. Roald was a spy, ace, fighter of pilots, chocolate historian, and medical inventor. He was also the author of Chocolate and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, the BFG, and many more brilliant stories. He remains the world's #1 storyteller, Quentin Blake, and is rated more than 300 books and was Roald's favorite illustrator. In 1980, he won the prestigious Kate Greenaway Medal. In 1999, he became the first ever children's laureate, and in 2013, he was knighted for service to illustration. Introducing James Henry Charter, Aunt Spiker, and Aunt Sponge, Old Green Grasshopper, Centipede, Miss Spider, Silkworm, Glowworm, Earthworm, Ladybug, Roald, James, and the Giant's Peach. This book is for Olivia and Tessa. 1. Until he was 4 years old, James Henry Charter had a happy, perfect life, and he lived peacefully from his mother to his father in a beautiful house beside the sea. There will always be plenty of the other children for him to play with. And there was a very sandy beach for him to run about on it, and on the ocean to paddle in, and it was the perfect life for a small boy. Then one day, James' mother and father went to London to do some shopping, and there was a terrible thing happened. Both of them suddenly got eaten up in the full daylight, mind you, on a crowded street, by an enormous, angry rhinoceros which had escaped from the London Zoo. Now, this, as you can well imagine, was rather nasty experiments for two just gentle parents, but in the long run of the far nastier for James than it was for them. But there was trouble, were all over in the jiffy, and they were dead and gone in 35 seconds flat. Poor James, and the other hand, was still very alive, and all at once he found himself alone and frightened into the vast, unfriendly world. The lovely house can be the seaside of the salt immediately, and the little boy, crying nothing for the small suitcase containing in a pair of pajamas and the toothbrush, was sent away to live with the two aunts. Their names were Aunt Spunk and Aunt Spiker, and I'm sorry to say they're both really horrible people. They were selfish and lazy, and they were cruel. And right from the beginning they started beating poor James for almost no reason at all. They never called him by his real names, but always referred nuisance, aren't you miserable creature. And they certainly never gave me any toys to play with, other pictures books to look at. His rooms were as bare as a Persian cell. They left Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spicer, And now James, as well as the queer ramshackle house on the top of the highest hill in the mountains of England. The hill was so high that almost anywhere in the garden James could look at for the sea miles and miles. James could look down to see the miles and miles across a marvelous landscape of woods and fields, and on a very clear day, if he looked in the right directions, he could see the tiny gray dot far away on the horizon, and which was the house that used to live with his beloved mother and father. And just beyond that, he could see the ocean itself in a long streak, and the blush is blue, like the line ink beneath the rim of the sky. But James was never allowed to go down off to the hill, of that hill. Neither and Sponge nor and Spire could ever be bothered to take him out herself, not even for the small walk of her panic. And he certainly wasn't permitted to go alone. The nasty little beast would only get the mischief. And if he goes into the terrible garden, Aunt Spicer's had said, and terrible punishments were promised him, such as being looked at the cellar with a rat of the weeks, if he even so much so dared to climb over the two fence. And the garden, which was covered by the top of the hill, was large absorbs for the clump two dirty laurel bushes in the far end of the entrance peach tree that never ever pinches for the swing no season no St. Peach, and not other children were invented for to come out to the hill to play with poor James too. After James Henry Chartered had been living with his aunt for 3 whole years, there came a morning when peculiar soon causes a second thing to happen, which was very spectacular things in its own turn, causes into the really fantastic peculiar thing to occur. It all started on a blazing hot day in the middle of the summer. Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spire, and James were out in the garden. Of James had been to work on ages. This time he was chopping wood for the chicken stove. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were sitting comfortably in the deck chairs nearby, sipping tall glasses of fizzy lemonade and watching him to see what he didn't stop for one moment. Aunt Sponge was enormously fat and very short. She had small piggy eyes, a sunken mouth, and one of those white flat bean faces that looked exactly as though it had been boiled. He was like the great white soggy over-boiled cabbage. Aunt Spiker, on the other hand, was lean and tall of the bony, and she wore steel rimmed spectacles that fixes to the end of her nose and the clip. She had scratching voice and long, wet, narrow lips, and whenever she got angry or excited, little flecks or spits out of shooting out in the mouth as she talked, and there was sad, these ugly glassy hacks, slipping for the drinks, and now began screaming at James to chop. Everyone and everything screams at James to chop faster and faster. They always talk it about themselves, each one saying how beautiful he tonight she was. Aunt Sponge has a long-handled mirror on her lap, and she kept picking it up of the gazing at her own hideous face. And he looked as so small for Aunt Sponge to declare as lovely as the rose, just feasted for their eyes and for my face. Observe my shapely nose and just behold for the heavenly silky slugs. And if I take off both of my socks, I'll see my dainty nose. But don't forget, Aunt Spicer cried, how much your tummy shows. Aunt Sponge went red. Aunt Spiker said, my sweet, you cannot win. Behold my glorious curvy shape, my teeth, and my charming grin. Bounties me, how I dodge my guardian's looks, and I just ignore for the pimple of my chin. My dear, old chats to Aunt Sponge and cried out, you were only the bones and skin, such lovely as and I possess can only truly shine in Hollywood. Aunt Sponge declared, oh, wouldn't that be fine? I'd capture all the napkins in my heart. They'd give me the landing parts of the store's all resigns. I think I'll make it. Aunt Spicer said, a lovely Frankenstein. But he looked at us for walking the lanes again for chopping back overwhelmed by the old unhappiness of my marriage with you. Aunt Spicer scratches, glaring at him over the top of her steel spectacles. James began to cry. Stop that immediately and get on your work, you nasty little beast. Aunt Sponge ordered. Oh, Auntie Sponge, James cried out, and Auntie Spicer, couldn't we all please just for once go down to the seaside of the bus? It isn't very far, and I'll feel so hot and so awful and so alone. Why a lazy, good for nothing bread? Aunt Spicer shouted. Beat him, cried Aunt Sponge. I certainly will. Aunt Spicer snapped as she glared at James, and James looked back at her with large, frightened eyes. I shall beat you later in the day, and so do we when we don't feel so hot, she said, and now get out of my sight, you disgusting worm, and give me some peace. James turned and ran, and she ran off as fast as he could and far end of the garden and hid himself behind that skim of dirty old laureled bushes that mentions earlier on for the cover face with his hands and began to cry and cry. 3. It was the point of the first day of old. The gather spectacular things that leads to so many much more spectacular happens to him. For suddenly, just behind him, James heard a rustling of leaves. Forge the turned round and saw an old man. It's funny, the dark green silks, germlings forged the bushes. He was a very small old man, but bushes. He was a very small old man, but he had a huge bald head and a small face for the coverage of all the bristly back whiskers. He stopped and went about for 3 yards away, and stood where there, leaning out of the sticks and staring hard at James. Of the spoke, his voice and so slow squeakies came closer to me, little boy, said for the big conies to James with his finger. Come right out close to me, and I'll show you something wonderful. James was frightened to move, and then the old man hobbled to step for two near away, and he was just pant into his pocket of his jacket and took out the small white of the paper bag. You see this? He whispered, waving the bag gently to and from in front of James' face. And you'll know this is, my dear. You know what's it's inside. What's this bag? Then he came nearer, still leaning forward and pushing his face so close to him that James could feel breath slow blowing on his cheeks. So the breath smelled more musky and stale, and silently muttered wails like air into this old cellar. Take a look, my dear, he said, opening the bag and tilting it towards James. Inside it, James could see a mass of tiny green things that looked like little stones of crystal. Each one was the size of a grain of rice. They were extraordinarily beautiful, and there was a strange brightness about them, the sort of the luminous qualities that made them glow and sparkled in the most wonderful way. Listen to them, the old man whispered. Listen to the move. James stared into the bag, and sure enough, there was a faint rustling sound coming out inside it. It was he noticed that all thousands of the green things were slowly, very slowly moving, teetering about the moving over each other as though as they alive. There was power and magic in those things, and there are many rest of the world put the other. And the old man said softly. So this video I tell you from page 1 to page 13. So I'll read to page 21. I'll go to drink some water, and then I will tell you about what the book was happening next. So I'll get to drink some water. Wait for me some minutes, or only some 5 seconds to 10 seconds. I'll go and very quickly. back to read it. 4. James Henry Chargers stood there clearing the bag and staring at the old man, and now the old man said, "All you've got to do is this. Take a large jar of water and pour all of this in the great green garden into it. Then very slowly into the little green things and into it. Then very slowly, one by one, and hands hairs bites the only heads, then sets them off. It gets them going to the couple of minutes, and all the waters will begin to the fourth of the bubble seriously, and as soon as it happens for the froth of the bubble." So this video I tell you about a new book named Roald, James, and the Giant's Peach. So next video we'll read this book but new pages. So this video is the end. Goodbye everyone. Thanks for listening to my video. Goodbye next time. Best for all of you.